5.
Hello, my name is Veronica Fuchs. Actually, Veronica McCormick Fuchs. That was my maiden name. And I might just start there. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, but right now I'm in Aventura. It's a little bit north of where we used to live 7 years ago in a house where we raised our children. And I'm in a senior complex right now. My story is probably not so unique, but I never thought that I would be caught up in this particular story because I believed in the Catholic Church. I believed all the teachings. I felt there was justice. I felt a lot of things about it. And I suddenly feel myself stripped away at my belief, but it was all created and started way back, okay? Let me just say, as a young girl, I was raised in this McCormick household, and there were 11 children, what they call a good Catholic family, size-wise. And we all went to Catholic school all the way through. All the way I went up to Barry University north of us. And my last 2 years I graduated from the University of Miami in music and voice. I taught school for 1 year just to save my money so I could go to New York. And then on my way to New York, I met Mr. Peter Fuchs, who was a conductor and pianist and so on. Well, we eventually married in New York, and our first child, Peter Paul, was born in 1964. Well, life was good, very good. We had shows, we were being, we traveled, and it was a happy family. And we loved our first son dearly. All right, I will flash forward a little. We had 3 other children that came 3 years after Peter. And since my husband's name is Peter, also, we decided to give Peter a nickname, and it was Skipper. So if you hear me refer to Skipper, it's really Peter. Well, what happened was later on, Peter, or Skipper, went all the way through Catholic school. He was a summa cum laude person. Every grade he was top grade and so on. And he graduated summa cum laude and went from Archbishop Curley was his last school. His first school was St. Rose of Lima. All right, he wanted to go to St. John Vianney, which is the seminary in Miami, not far from where we live. And he entered. And I was happy if this is what his happiness was all about. And we supported him. Well, after about 3 months, I noticed something very different. He was not happy-go-lucky. He wasn't coming in all full of enthusiasm and coming in the kitchen and hugging and kissing us and talking about a minute and so on. He would come in and drag in, and sometimes he might come to the kitchen, but very low-key. He would very low-key drag himself upstairs to his room. Well, another 3 months went by, and after that, I remember him saying that he had spoken to this spiritual director, and they had decided that he needed a psychiatrist. The spiritual director's name was Father Neil Doherty. I have since looked up Father Neil Doherty. I knew him, but not intimately or personally, of course not. But I would see him there. He would be there at a mass if we came to the seminary. So anyway, little did I know what was going on. I was not privy to know that. I was only told he needed a psychiatrist. I never knew why, and when I confronted him, he said, well, that's what they told him. All I could surmise at that point was he was in shock, probably didn't understand what was happening all around him, because when I found out since then about Father Bernie Curlin and Neil Doherty and it was Archbishop Favalora. I have the thing that I found on the internet, something about cabal. And when I saw my son was mentioned in there, he was firsthand talking. And I said, oh my God, I don't believe this. So I've been putting bits and pieces together, probably for a good 40 years, I would say, something like that, trying to figure this out, what happened. And in this interim, when he was graduating from St. John Vianney way back, he did the 4 years of college in 3, and he graduated summa cum laude, in spite of he jammed it all into 3 years. They sent him to the Catholic school in Washington, D.C., Catholic University, and there he was excelling also. But here's where the path turned. He started having issues. He had issues with us, of which we had no knowledge of, and I couldn't seem to fit it together. I couldn't understand it. It didn't make any sense. So it wasn't until he came home, I guess 3 years afterwards, and he said, I've decided I'm not going to go to the 4th year. I'm just going to cut it short, and I have to tell you, Bob, I'm homosexual. I have a lover that I'm going to go back to in Washington, and so that's that. Well, it took me a while to adjust to it and figure it out. Of course, I was shocked. I had no knowledge of any of this going on. He still did not tell me what happened at the seminary, and so the rest was up for me to find out later, much, much later. As I said, we're talking about 40 years, maybe. So am I disappointed with the church? Absolutely. Am I angry? Yes, I'm angry because I was not able to help my son. I wasn't able to do anything for him to help him through any of this. But I can tell you one thing, that I thought back on this. I said, if it had been my knowledge somewhere there, I would have helped. So I at least could feel a little better that I did not have that. He did not share those moments with me. And I have now discovered that if I go forward with this with Peter or Skipper, I have to be prepared for the road that I'm on now, which is not the same as before. Now I am enlightened. Now I have the information. Now I have the documentation. Now I have his words from the blogging that I went to and took things off. His words are in the Cabal business that I got. I have his words there. I even looked up his so-called spiritual advisor and found out that Father Neil Doherty is, he was a pedophile, and over and over and over and over and over, well, so many of these people came forward that finally, I guess one of the lawyers finally got to him, and they took him and put him in jail, and now he's in prison. For how many years, I am not sure about that, but he's in prison. And so I said, maybe I should go forward with some of these things because the church does not want to change. One of my main objectives here is that if the priest could marry, all of this craziness would not happen. They would have the right outlet to go into the right form and the right everything that would be called normal. But when you take an abnormal situation, I even cited like a stream that's blocked up, that can't go through, it finds its way. It will find a way. It will suddenly break off into a deviated system someplace else. So this is what's happened. And now with the church, what they've done is they have taken these priests and moved them from parish to parish to parish to parish. They never get caught. They only get a slap on the wrist if they get that. And they are told that they can now function in this church, only to do exactly what they did before and hurt more individuals. And if you think for 1 minute that Peter or Skipper was the only victim in this story, he was not. It hit our whole family, all of his brothers and sisters, okay? So I'll tell you what, I said, yes, I need to get to the bottom of it. I need to have this heard by the only person I know that can change some of these things would be Pope Francis, that he would be able to say that priests could marry, okay? Priests were allowed to have a partner in life, a female, okay? And if not, I'm not objecting to homosexuality. I'm not. If that's what their call is in life, that has nothing to do with me. I'm my own self. I'm on my own spiritual path. So if that's their spiritual path, so be it. I want to cite something here. There was a priest named Father Coutier. Father Coutier was a very high-profile Catholic priest. I'm not sure now, I can't remember if he was born in Cuba or he was born here by Cuban parents. But I know he was Spanish, that's all I remember. He wanted to be a priest his entire life. He became a priest. And he was devoted to the priesthood. And guess what? He falls in love with this woman. They don't know what to do with this love relationship. And so they keep it going because they are so in love with each other. And I have to be truthful. I suppose if it happened to me, I wouldn't know either. And I'd go forward with what makes you comfortable and happy. So I'm looking back now and thinking when I was following Father Coutier, which is probably maybe 15 or 20 years ago by now. I was still in my house then. I wasn't up here in Aventura. I remember I was interested because of this priest could marry. I was thinking if only the priest could marry. Here is a priest that wants to be a priest. He wants to be under Jesus. He wants to do the right thing, but he's fallen in love. This is the crime. This is the sin. So he decides what he's got to do. He doesn't know what to do. And what he finally decided to do is because the Episcopalian Church stepped up to the plate and said, I see you're being thrown out of the Catholic Church for what you did. You can no longer be a priest. You've broken your vow, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he decides he'll be Episcopalian. They embraced him. He can still be a priest, but a priest that's not under the Pope's auspices. So I'm thinking to myself, what makes sense here? All of a sudden I thought, if this priest could have married. So now I see he's going to say his first Mass at the Church of the Resurrection over the bridge into Biscayne Park, near where we lived at the time. I said, I'm going. And they were packed full of people, and I stood at a corner by myself, but I must see what this priest is going to say. And so I stood, and along comes my daughter. I knew I'd find you here. And along comes another friend, Ziggy Ferguson. I knew I'd find you here. Okay, the three of us now embrace this moment, and we listen to what this priest had to say. And what it was is his only crime was that he fell in love with this woman. They couldn't stay away from each other. They needed each other desperately, and that was the end of the road. He didn't know how to back it up. He didn't want to be living in the shadows. So thank God for the Episcopalian Church inviting him and embracing him into a new life. And that's where I suppose he is now. I have not looked him up, but I wanted to hear his story. And he apologized to the Catholic community, and he apologized to the community that I was standing in right that minute at the Church of the Resurrection. That he did not mean to be deceitful, but this is just what happened. He couldn't help himself, and she couldn't either. So they're married, and they have a baby. So life goes on. But let's get back to the Catholic Church. Where are we with the Catholic Church, okay? I really don't know how to solve my problems after finding out what happened at the seminary. Father Curlin was an alcoholic. He tried every which way to get Skipper into the bed, which if you read the whole thing that I've said, then you will see that he tried. One way was while he was still in this, coming home, he was in the seminary in Miami, he would either let Skipper say, let's go to Charade or let's go to this fancy restaurant. So where he got the money, I guess it's a slush fund from St. John Vianney. Again, stealing money to wine and dine my son. So this is not correct, and I don't like that. And I watched it for months and months and months. And if you say years, I might even say years, until Peter graduated and Father Curlin invited him to go to Rome. After Rome, and for what I read in one of these articles, was that the church, Miami Archdiocese, decided to see if they could break this relationship up in some way. They, instead of sending him to the church in Boynton Beach or the seminary in Boynton Beach, they decided to send him to Washington, to Catholic University. And from Catholic University, the story changed. Well, he then was angry. Every time I would speak with him or talk with him, he was angry. It was always about the church. It was always something. Once they came with his partner, they went out to dinner at a restaurant, an Italian restaurant on Treasure Island. We waited, because it was such a tiny restaurant, you had to wait to be seated. And when they finally seated us, it was unbelievable. It was like a room that only like 2 big parties could be in. The other party were like maybe 12 to 15 priests, all decked out in their black outfits, and my son almost croaked. He looked over and he said, if one of those guys, and I knew a few of them, but again, I don't know them personally, but I knew of them through Peter, or Skipper. So I said, what is it about? He said, I will have plenty to say about those guys. So what was going on? I don't know. He still wouldn't share. He didn't tell me anything then. And that goes back at least 25 years, okay? This was all a growing process of which I was becoming aware of. But now the reality struck. Last April 19th at 11:30 at night, I get the call that no mother wants to hear, that my son Peter, Skipper, has passed away. I was in total shock. I didn't know what to think, up, down, in and out. I was grateful for the fact that he had come when I had broken my hip. I had broken my hip and he came to see me at the care center. So I guess that you could call a closing of some sort, or acknowledgement that he cared and loved me. And I'm grateful for that, very grateful. But what happened with the church, I will never know totally. But I need to straighten out a few things also. It wasn't just the fact that we need to change this thing with the celibacy. We must change the position of the women in the church. I have a whole family full of very good Catholics, willing very much so to devote themselves to Jesus Christ and his earth church, the church militant. There is a church triumphant, if I remember from my catechism. So I choose, even though I'm still alive, to hobnob with the church triumphant. I can't trust the church militant. I don't understand the church militant, and I still want to be connected to Jesus. So I have to do it for my own self. But why can't women have some kind of authority in the church? Why can't women be a priest? Why can't women, as a nun, be able to marry and enjoy that fruit for them also? I do not think this was made by Jesus Christ, that he asked for that to happen. And I don't think, in my mind's eye, that this is really pleasing to Jesus Christ, how I'm talking now to try to straighten something out like that with pedophiles and people that are waiting for the red meat to come to the seminary, so they have new connections. And the one priest that gets outside, what do they call it, people that he's connecting with from the street. I mean, this is all so bizarre. to me. That is not living the Christ life in my head. So I am a spiritual person. I am a very high-level spiritual person that loves Jesus, loves God. I love the saints. I like to talk about spiritual things, but I am so let down with the Catholic Church. I went to see Curlin twice. He was the main centerpiece. He's still roaming around. He stole an apartment, from what I understand. I looked that up. He was in court. He had stolen money from St. Augustine, and he was in court. I don't know what he did at St. Magdalena, where he was in Sunrise. That was the second place I went to see him. But he never once said, I'd like to say I'm sorry, Veronica, for all the pain and anguish that I caused you, or we, the church, caused you. I never heard anything like that, but I did hear him say to me, just about maybe 10 years ago, I went there very excited and very upset, and he said, well, you know, I went to confession, Veronica, and I've said my penance to the priest, or not my penance, I said my confession to the priest, and he gave me absolution. So you know, Veronica, that wipes away my sin. So I didn't like that either. I didn't say anything. I just thought that's a real cop-out. I should be hearing some kind of amends that you're sorry, but I didn't hear it. I didn't say anything. But I was getting angrier each time I made connections or found out something new. So I'm appealing to you to help me to figure this out so I can have a closure. I want closure to what happened to my son. I want closure with my son. I want closure so I don't feel guilty that I didn't protect my son through all of this that happened, that I didn't even know about. I'm finding out after his death, and that was a few months back, because it was April 19th, 2023. Thank you very much. I would appreciate if somebody would get back with me and just let me know what you think. Let me know what you understand from this. Maybe you're involved in the same thing or was, or maybe you have very similar background and we could connect. I would appreciate it. But it's one mother standing with God, trying to figure out how to change one little thing in the Catholic Church for the priest to be able to marry and the women to have the right to be a priest and to have a high-functioning profile in the Catholic Church. I thank you very much for listening. God bless you.